Hello. So today we have a very exciting guest with us. We have Lucia, who, if you haven't seen or are familiar with her artwork, she's a beautiful artist, priestess, and I feel like each piece of art that she creates is a transmission. So if you haven't experienced or are familiar with her artwork, you can find her. We'll include her website and her Instagram in the show notes. So definitely go take a peek at that because I think that will, kind of open up the door as you listen to this conversation. But we're very excited to have you here with us, Lucia, today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to hold this space with you too.
Welcome. It's so good to get to sit with you. Um, our kind of first interest is your story. How did you blossom into this art and the fact that your art is transmission? It's so beautiful, and we'll talk more about the specifics, but let's just hear from you on what your path was.
Yeah, of course, I'd love to tell my story, although I always find that when I look back at my journey, it feels so non-linear, and I always feel like there are certain lessons that I was learning very early on that kind of loop back and continue to not repeat themselves necessarily, but almost they still have wisdom in them. So I always find that very interesting. But I think my journey with art really began in high school. I was going through a really difficult time internally, and I had some difficult situations with the family. And I was just filled with self-doubt. I had no certainty, and it gave me a lot of anxiety, as I think it does so many of us, that we have that need to know things. And I think it's amplified when you don't feel stable in your external reality at all. And so the inner kind of insecurities are amplified. And so I really was in a lot of turmoil between the ages of probably, 15 to 18. And so during those years, I was on this journey of trying desperately to find an identity to make me feel safe. I was really trying to fit into something, to have something solid that I could define myself by, and uh, it really exhausted me. And during this time, of course, in high school, you're also thinking about career, and you have this pressure to know what you're going to do when you graduate. Are you going to go to university? What will you study? What do you want to do afterwards? What are you going to do with your life? And I had a few interests at school. I was into history, English, and art. And of course, I didn't think I could be an artist. That was just not even in my head, as I think so many of us in school, we don't think, oh, I'm going to be an artist when I grow up. Um, and so I thought I would go to university for history or English. And then in the 2 last years of school, I got a new art teacher, and I think I was at the peak of just this inner desperation to figure things out and to just be certain about myself and about life, which is an impossible task. Um, and I remember in the first 5 minutes of my first class with him, he said to all of us, in order to be a good artist, you have to know who you are. And given that I was spending every minute of every day at that time for years trying to know who I was, and it felt impossible and horrible. I think I had a breaking point in that moment, and I just said, okay, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to accept that to be a good artist, I have to know who I am, because I clearly cannot do that. And so that's when I started exploring mystery, and when I sort of gave up this idea of needing to know who I was, and told myself that I would explore the opposite path and discover what it meant to be a good artist, not knowing who I was, and seeing what I would discover there. And at the same time, my art teacher, he was friends with an astrophysicist who worked at CERN. I don't know if you know about CERN in Geneva. It's one of the main centers in the world that study the universe and astrophysics and that sort of thing. And so we had this little day trip to CERN, and they gave us a guide around the big collider and all that. We studied all the atoms and everything they were exploring. And the project was that we had to choose something that we'd learned that day and merge science and art in some way. So to create art from something we learned from astrophysics. And I remember being so impressed by the idea of dark matter and dark energy, and how I think it's 97% of the universe is made up of something that we don't know. We just don't know what it is. And I remember thinking it was so funny that my brain was so obsessed with figuring everything out, just having complete certainty around myself and life and the universe and how everything worked. And yet, these scientists who are leading the way in discovering the universe only know 3% of what it is. And everything we base our knowledge off is based on this 3%, basically. And so that was at the same time of deciding, okay, I'm not going to know who I am. And this discovering this piece of information was just confirmation that it's not worth trying to know everything, because even if you think you know everything, still 97% of the universe is a mystery. And so while I think a lot of people would feel anxious about that immense and vast mystery there is out there, I felt a deep, deep comfort in it. And it just sort of opened the doors really wide for me to accept mystery and to start healing and to start just exploring art from that space. And so my art was very, very different back then. Obviously, it was just exploring all kinds of mediums and different types of things. But every piece of art for me was this exploration of not knowing. And at the end of every art journey, I could see a piece of myself in that. So, and it was always something that I couldn't describe. And so it became this, like this ironic thing where I was finally discovering who I was, but not through words, through these little artistic journeys, through mystery. So that's where it began. And honestly, from there, I realized that I couldn't live without art. And so I gave up the idea of going to university for history or English. And I took a gap year. And I just dedicated myself to healing and continuing to create with no purpose. I still didn't think I could be an artist. So I did sign myself up for university. And the next year went to university and then dropped out after 3 months, maybe less, because I just had this deep intuition that I had to do it a different way, that if I was going to make a career out of art or just, make my life art and live off of it, that I would have to do it my own way. And I had no idea what that would look like. And from there, things just sort of happened. So that's sort of the beginning of my journey.
I love it. I love also that we're meeting today on the new moon. So we have a new moon in Cancer. And this idea of this, like going into the unknown and like being okay with it. Because I think, as a whole, like we aren't generally okay with like the mystery of life and going into the unknown and being in that space. And I was just sharing with Amy before we got on that we have a tropical storm Elsa here in the Northeast, which I don't know if you've ever seen Frozen, the movie, but I just keep, so in my head for like the last day since the storm was coming, I've just been hearing that like into the unknown. So the fact that you're bringing this in and we have this new moon, it just feels like a reminder that like, we all need to hear at this point that is okay to be in that space of the not knowing. And it also brings up, I'm curious when tarot kind of came into your life, like where, so I know you're creating a tarot deck, which Amy and I are very excited to hear more about. But like, when did tarot come into your life? I also know I've experienced through your Sacred Avatar offering, as has Amy, that you include tarot in it. And I know, I feel you have a beautiful way of like reading tarot. So when did tarot come in to your life? Like when did that kind of be a thing?
It was around the same time as I really delved into the mystery and accepted that that path was the only way to go. Um, it it was a friend of mine actually who had his uncle had given him a tarot deck, and I remember I had heard lots about tarot, and I was already starting to be interested in spirituality and sort of the mystery of all these different tools that you could use. And he gave me a tarot reading, and it just resonated so deeply. At the time, he was still learning about it, so I feel like we were both sort of in the discovery of the cards. But one thing that was so obvious was just how accurately they reflected how I was feeling in that moment. And I was hooked after that. I bought my own deck, and I taught myself through the internet and through books what each card meant, and I fell in love with the symbolism behind it and the history. Um, and I'm still learning about how it works. I don't think I'll ever really fully know. I think that's also the point, is to have that mystery within it. But yeah, once it appeared in my life, it became such a deep part of my journey and my inner discovery. Yeah.
Love that. I also really, your story of, I didn't know what was going on, I didn't have any words, and the choice to lean into the mystery, to lean
Mhm.
into the 97% of the unknown. As a parent, like, there are definitely times when I'm like, child, my little child, I've given you so many words. How can you not know? And that reminder is so powerful that we only, like, we're working on 3% of all knowledge. And
Mhm.
the inner fortitude and resilience it takes to lean into the mystery just like leaves me in further awe of you and your journey, because we forget, like, we don't really become adults until we're 30, and there's so much pressure for young people to just like, why don't you just know?
Mhm.
And I know a lot of adults who don't know, and it's so much harder for adults to let go and to lean into the not knowing than it is for young people. And as adults, we spend all of this time like pushing and ushering. How was it for your parents to be like, oh, like you were so like, I'm good in the not knowing? Like you hit your point, it sounds like that you're like, I'm cool. There's 97% and all these scientists, they don't know, and I'm cool. How was it for your parents? I'm asking as a parent and as a child who's going to be a teenager at some point.
I love that question. And I guess it's hard for me to answer because I will never know
Mhm.
what their perspectives really were, but they were incredibly supportive
Oh,
towards
good.
me. And I think I could see the concern, and I could hear it in their voices sometimes when they asked me, like, what are you going to do? Like, what's your plan?
Mhm.
Especially after I dropped out of uni and I was working, in a cafe and in different shops. But it definitely, I was in my head, I knew that was only temporary. Um, and they would ask me, yeah, what's your plan? Like, you're going to go back to uni? What are you going to do? And I think my confidence reassured them. I think the fact that I was so certain that I'd be okay reassured them. Um, but I don't know how they really felt otherwise. I'm very grateful for how supportive they were, and they never tried to turn me in a different direction. Um, but it was my determination, and I think as parents, probably the greatest thing you can give to your child is to believe in them
Mm.
and to believe in their direction, and if they are, very confident about something, just to encourage that confidence. Um, because the moment that you start to plant doubt in their heads is when they sort of doubt themselves, and believing in yourself, as cliche as it sounds, is really so important if you're going to go on your own path in a creative journey. you have to trust your ability to make your own path.
Oh, I
Because
love that.
otherwise the mystery is just terrifying. And I'm still, every few months I'm initiated into new spaces of mystery, and it's always scary. But because of the faith that I have in, what will come on the other side, I'm able to move through that. But if you don't have that, it really is impossible. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. I'm like, I know there's a reason I see this woman as a high priestess, and all of that like wraps it up beautifully. Like that, the grounding that we can provide as adults when we believe in the people
Mm,
around us, especially our kids. Thank you.
yeah.
Yummy, yummy. What inspired you to bring in tarot and art? Having participated in your Sacred Avatar program, which was life-changing and mind-blowing. What
Thank
what
you.
seeds created the dance?
Well, for me, art it's the art that I'm making. It's not just for, being visually pleasurable. It's much, for me, the importance in it is about transformation, and is about connecting to ourselves and our inner creative essence, which you can also call the divine feminine, because that's what she is. She's that creative essence. And for so long I was using tarot as a tool to facilitate my own growth and transformation. And I was using self-portraiture as well as a way to discover myself and define what felt beautiful and inspiring to me, and a way to empower my sensuality as well. And then the third step in Sacred Avatar, which is the drawing of the inner goddess, that for me was always a way of affirming that reality was just as um, well, not just as powerful as the opposite, but we manifest from a space of how we feel inside. And so if you're affirming a reality where you don't feel powerful, then being able to draw out a version of you that is powerful and is divine is affirming that reality is also valid. And so putting those three things together was just, I don't know, it was so obvious to me. I didn't even have to think about it. I think it was just finding a way to structure it. But because what tarot cards do and what tarot cards allow is to make a space for that mystery to be opened up, because we always think we know the answer, we think we know what question we want to ask, but the tarot cards will always reflect energy, and there is always mystery in how that energy is reflected and how that story is told. And so you are forced to let go of the voice in you that's constantly narrating things, just for a moment to listen to a different perspective. Both the reader and the listener are forced to do that in order to see a clear reflection of what is trying to be transmitted. And so the reason I included that in my own practices and then in Sacred Avatar was because it just opens this portal for that higher self to come through and to be expressed. And then that practice of self-portrait, taking your self-portraits, is just a way of allowing that energy to be embodied and just anchoring it into the physical reality before it's affirmed in the artwork.
Yeah, and as someone who has, we both at Amy and I have both experienced the Sacred Avatar offering, I guess, and maybe even just to, for those who aren't familiar with it, who are listening, who maybe have gotten kind of pieces of what it's like. Lucia kind of went through the steps, but really from, what it was like to experience it was, yeah, this tarot reading that really opened the door. And it, like you said, it kind of, it just drops like, here it is. Like there's no, and you can interpret it a little different, but it's like, here it is, here's the energy. And, this is what it is. And so then you can take that for yourself. And I know with you, we talked about, sometimes it's like, what are the blocks and where are the gifts and where are the blocks? Because I know for me, I didn't know what it was going to be like going into the Sacred Avatar offering. I just knew it was something I had to do. And then taking that And it was very empowering. Like I would say coming away from it, it was very empowering of like, okay, I can do this. And then waiting for the time when it was time to take that self-portrait, which I will say was so beautifully, like way more challenging than I thought it would be, you know. And I consider myself like, yeah, like I'm open, I'm connected to my energetics, to my body, to my sensuality, but it opened up a whole new door because there's something to, and I know you had recommended like to take a video, and then that way you're not like posing and trying to like, get a picture, like the 10-second timer or something. So that was a whole different experience of having a video and then having to go back and watch yourself on the video. And then you get this picture, which you also have to discern, like, where in that, however many minutes you were taking a video, like, what's that moment when I was like, oh yes, that is me. Like, and that is me from a higher kind of, kind of perspective. And then seeing it come back in this, because it's your interpretation, which also, if there's anything else that you would like to add of how it goes from, picture of this, human being to this beautiful avatar where you're really seeing like, it's this, I felt for me, it was like seeing pieces of myself in a like a divine light. If you were to like, kind of like take this little light and shine it and be like, okay, but these are those little divine like gold pieces that maybe you don't see all the time, but you have it now to look at and to remind yourself. And for me, that's what it's become. I have it hanging in my bedroom, and it's this reminder of like, oh yeah, that I'm human and I'm divine. I'm both. And yeah, I forget, but it's a reminder of that. So just to share, just so our listeners kind of can feel like the whole experience from from what it was for me. And if there's anything, Amy, you want to add, or Lucia to add of like, how that translates from photo to art.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience. Really,
Yeah.
I honor that. And I know how difficult it is to take those self-portraits as well. But my hope is that, and you kind of described that a little bit, that there's a certain point throughout that little ritual that you create where you feel that freedom in yourself, and you feel that that knowledge that you are the one who decides whether you're empowered or not. And it brings back the power to yourself. You're the one who can move your body in different poses and express different ways of expressing your divine feminine and moving into that sensuality being such a key point, I think, within this ritual. Because for me, being sensual in our female bodies is about being relaxed in our confidence, and in that knowing that we're safe in ourselves and we can inspire ourselves, and we are beautiful, and we are divine creators as well as physical beings. And it's connecting to that inner feeling of sensuality and that inner feeling of beauty, and then allowing it to kind of pour out into the body, so that hopefully when you're looking at those pictures of yourself, it's no longer about judging what your external being looks like, and more seeing in that picture a moment where you felt empowered and a moment where you felt transformed. And that's why it's so powerful for me then to be able to affirm that moment in a piece of art, because it's really affirming what you said, that divine self and that inner realm that you have, which is so much more important than what you judge about your physical appearance. Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's so, so beautiful. And I cannot say enough good things about the Sacred Avatar experience. When you sent me the digital copy of my Sacred Avatar, like I sat down and cried, like it, and still like, here come the tears. there's so much magic in what you're bringing and the doors that you're opening up through this program. Because collectively as women, there's so much body pressure to heal from. And when I say body pressure, I mean like body image, like how your body looks, how your body works, how it's put together. And there is so much healing in this offering. Like I cannot express that deeply enough. The tarot part was beautiful. It was, my head had all kinds of plans on how that video was going to go and when it was going to happen. And when it dropped in, like, go do this right now. I'm like, okay, go do this right now. And it took me, I don't think I like really dove into my video until after I got in my avatar. And it was one of those moments that as I was like sitting there looking at the digital image, I'm like, okay, I can do this. Like I can sit and really dive into this because this is what's there. And I can
Amazing.
move past that like very human um woman born in the 70s and like dealing with the 80s and 90s pressure to look and be a certain way to be okay. So like just from
Yeah.
the deepest bottom like cellular level of my soul, thank you for what you're offering for all women.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And now tell us about your sacred portraits, because that's another option that you do, which are beautiful and they're so Hygeia. Like the engoldening that you do is so yummy. And I'm just waiting to have a picture that I can be like, sacred portrait me.
Thank you so much. I mean, with those, the concept is the same in that I am drawing out the invisible aspects that we can't see in the mirror. And it's just a reminder of that inner light, you know, and it's an affirmation again of just weaving that into the portrait so that you remember it. And in that remembering, you're able to move forward and create from that space again of valuing yourself. It's true what you said about, you know, women having this body pressure, especially on social media. And we focus so much on that, and then we start to make our decisions and base our life path almost on a judgment of who we should be, rather than just feeling into who we are and into the massive mystery of that, and then creating our life path as a beautiful exploration of that inner light and that inner creative essence. But with the sacred portrayals, it's done differently. So you send me your portraits and then I print it out and I draw over them with gold pens and I rephotograph them and then send you the digital copy. So it's a very different process and there's no tarot reading in that, but it's the same intention as weaved into it. Yeah. And I wanted to say as well that I think often we try to solve these issues that we have in the wrong way, and we start searching for structures to follow and methods to follow that will get us from A to B. And again, it's that need for certainty that if we do it this way, we'll be okay. And if we do it this way, we'll get this result and we'll be free. And it's so funny to me that I do it too. I think we all do it. I think it's just a human need that we have. But whenever I follow the mystery and I think that, okay, this is going to be really difficult to overcome and I'll have to move into the mystery and it's going to be really scary. And then it's super easy. Something just happens and all of a sudden I'm tapped back into remembering my inner divine worth and I can start creating from this space. And it's just a reminder of how our ego almost wants it to be difficult because then it affirms the reality it's living in where things need to be difficult in order to be rewarded for them. And so we start looking for ways that it's going to be difficult and we forget that the divine feminine is all about pleasure and ease. And it's just ironic to me that it is actually really easy, but we make it so difficult for ourselves. And that's why with what I'm offering, I want these reminders to just be an easy way to tap into that divinity and an easy way to affirm it and to remember that it doesn't have to be difficult, you know, that it can be a pleasurable experience. Of course, you'll have to move those resistances and those feelings of shame and guilt that will inevitably be there, but ultimately it won't be the suffering that you think it will be. Yeah. It's a difficult topic, I think, because I don't want to undermine suffering that people do feel, but I've seen it in myself and my loved ones that sometimes we don't realize that we're choosing to suffer because it feels safer, you know, and we are just repressing our ability as humans to create our life. And the reason we are so resistant to that is because our ego wants to be validated in its own reality where things are difficult and things have to be done in a structured way. And I think it's such a shame. So my goal really is just to keep awakening the creative essence in people, because that's where it all begins.
Yeah, and this is just such, even for me right now, I'm like, yeah, like just the messages that I'm needing to hear for what I'm going through. And I'm sure like everybody listening can relate, because, you know, I have a friend who's like, she's like, write down all the times where you jumped into the unknown and it worked, because every time it does. But like you said, we hit those new layers of resistance where we, you know, we stay in the suffering, or we forget that. Because it's easy, it is our human to forget that. But I think another piece that I'm really like, you know, honing in on is the fact that you did it in your unique way. And I think that's another piece of like, you know, we can compare and we can, you know, or even hear someone's story and be like, oh my gosh, I'm not that. And I think, you know, your, and even just your journey saying like, you know, yeah, I could have gone to university. I could have, you know, gone on, and, you know, you probably would have gotten eventually to where you are now, because it's, you know, it's what you are and are doing, but you took your own way. And I think that's something that, you know, is just a really important piece of it too, that we all have these unique, and that's what shows in your artwork. Like if you look at your art, every woman that you have portrait of, like they are all these unique, beautiful, you know, pieces of art, and that is coming through that person. And so I think that's another piece that both, you know, from hearing your story and also from it shows in your artwork that we are unique. And I think that's one of the pieces too, to remind us that the you know, diving into the unknown piece, and that it's not going to look like anybody else's. And that is also a challenge, because it hasn't been written before. Like it's yours, so it hasn't ever been written. There's nothing to like say, oh yeah, like other than in my life I can say, okay, I have done this thing and it's ended up okay. So that brings me to, unless you have anything else, Amy, that's kind of like bringing up, but it brings me to this, what you're creating now. So this tarot, and I know you're in, so tell us where you are in this creating of it. Because I've been following you and seeing there's been like a couple little pieces that you have, you know, like shown, but where are you in the process, and what would you like to share as far as what that has been like?
Yeah, of course. It's been a dream of mine to create a tarot deck for a long time, and I had so much resistance to it because I just didn't think that I could do it. It felt like such a big project, and I wasn't sure I was able to deliver it. So at the moment, I'm still in the creation of it, and I'm still being met with so much resistance inside. But it's this, you know, at every point in my life, there's a project that finds me and shows me the way forward and heals whatever it is that I need healing. And so this tarot deck is doing just that for me right now. And that's why I'm really allowing it to come through in its own time, because I've been working on it for about a year now, so a long time. And that voice comes in that's really impatient inside of me that says it should be done by this time at this date. But once I realized that this project was transforming me rather than me kind of creating it, I just released that pressure that I was putting on myself. And I think it's such an important lesson when we're living our lives as creatives, is just to allow whatever we're creating to also create us, if that makes sense, and to release a little bit of control over it. So at the moment, yeah, I'm still in the creative process of drawing the cards, and I'm just really, really excited about releasing it and having it as a physical deck so soon. But yeah, and talking about mystery and not knowing what the path is going to look like and not having examples outside of us that look like where we want to go. I'm sort of in that space now because my art business sort of came out of nowhere. That's how I see it. But when I look back and other people look at my journey who know me, I was working on my art for a good 3 years with no reward from it. Obviously, yes, I was being very rewarded internally from it, but no reward in terms of, physical or material manifestations coming from that. And it really taught me that it's about self-devotion. That is the piece. It's self-devotion. And when my business arose out of it sort of appeared to be out of nowhere, I was confused as to how it happened. And when people would ask me, how did you do this? I said, I don't know. I think I just got lucky through social media or whatever. But really, it was just all those years of trusting myself and devoting to my projects and allowing them to show me the way. And I'm at this point now, a year after, maybe it's been a year and a half since I've really been working as an artist, where I'm trying to redirect my path or analyze where I'm at and create new intentions where I want to go. And this tarot deck is really pushing me to sit in the mystery and allow it to show me what's next. That's sort of where I'm at.
You saying self-devotion was like a ugh to my body. Like I was like, yes, like that right there, that 2-word phrase is so beautiful and it's so undervalued. I had a young woman client in yesterday, and she had this beautiful moment where she was owning something really powerful about herself. And then she framed it with like, I don't want to sound like I'm full of myself. And that is what she was having. She was having this moment of self-devotion. And then she was like coming in and being like, oh, but I don't know that I can do that. And I was like, yes, you get to own that. Like and it was self-devotion. So I love that phrase, that self-devotion. Because in the moment I didn't have any words for what she was doing, and now I do. So thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, self-devotion is the key, and it looks different for everyone, but how I describe it is just pouring your energy into yourself. And for me, that is pouring my energy into my art, into my creativity. It might look different for others, but self-devotion and trusting that, well, self-devotion is devotion to the universe on the deepest level. And so trusting that when you devote to yourself, you will receive that devotion back from your external reality. And sometimes it may take a long time, like it did for me, but I never, throughout those 3 years where I was in that space of self-devotion and just creating and loving my creative essence, I never had a goal with it because I still didn't believe that being an artist was a possibility. But just that devotion to the self and that just being rewarded from the feeling that you get from it and the feeling of wholeness and fulfillment is where the doors will open for you in really mysterious ways. And it is always better than you can imagine. People talk a lot about manifestation and how you need to make it really specific and make a list. And really, I think the magic is in just setting the intention and then devoting yourself to yourself in whatever way that looks like without a goal, and then seeing what comes through. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, this is all coming in too, because feeling into the new moon, like, and wanting to set intentions, all of these pieces are just like really potent reminders of like what really coming into the essence is, because we can set intentions about anything, right? And we have new moons every month. But it feels like there's a really like, juicy and potent message in that, like, if you can kind of get it down to that self-devotion piece, everything else, like you said, everything else will reflect externally. But if you can really get that, and like you said, it doesn't have to be a list. Like I've been really feeling into more of the feeling that I want to manifest, and like I might not have words for it, because I know actually for me, when I get specific, it doesn't work out. And I know everybody's different. So I just know for me, when I get specific, it's not good. It ends up being like that, be careful what you wish for thing. Whereas if I manifest from a deeper feeling, and I love that, I agree with Amy, like that, having those words for it, that self-devotion, like that may be my new moon kind of piece to feel into for myself. That it opens the door in a way that you couldn't have even imagined, feeling into that, the mystery of it all. Like we can't understand it, and we can't see it, and we can't even imagine how these things want to show up in our lives.
And I think when we play with that very, like, I'm going to give you a list of what I want to manifest rather than a feeling, rather than I want to be devoted to myself, we end up playing small because we don't have any idea what is possible, because our little human brains are like, oh, well, that can't happen. So if we lean into I think about my Akashic Records training, like I want it better than I could imagine. I want this healing to be deeper than I could imagine, like to take me past what my little human brain can possibly come up with, and be in mystery of what is possible with that 97% of mystery. Like there's so much mystery and there's so much unknown. And we really do box ourselves in and create our own smallness and our own restriction when we live within the 3%. So that's like so beautiful. I'm like, oh, that's so juicy and good, and let's go with that.
It is.
I love that.
Do you have, so you've got your sacred, oh, Alexis, do you have any other questions first? Lucia, do you have anything else that you want to add to this before I kind of ask a couple more like things?
No, I'd love to hear your next questions.
Okay. So you have your sacred avatar program. You've got your sacred portrait program, and the tarot deck is going to show up when it shows up, and I'm going to be in line to make my little order. Do you have any other way that people can work with you? Because we're going to have your website and your Instagram in the show notes. Is there any other, for people who are like, ooh, what else does Lucia do? What else does Lucia do?
Thank you. I've done a couple workshops this year you can purchase the recorded versions. I've done an Empress workshop and a High Priestess workshop, and they were kind of exploring the archetypes of the Empress and High Priestess in tarot, and looking at how we can just deepen our creativity through each of those archetypes. And apart from that, I also offer commissions on custom designs for logos or for businesses, and occasionally tattoo designs. I don't tattoo them myself, but people who do want tattoos, I do work with people for that as well.
Super
And
cool.
what I have at the moment, I'm really trying to open different ways to work with people, because I really, really want to transmit that message of being able to reconnect to your creative essence and be empowered by that in new ways. And that's what I'm allowing the mystery to show me at the moment.
Love this. Do you have anything else, Alexis? As my voice
I-
cracks.
No, I love it. I'm just sitting here thinking like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go listen to this as soon as we get the recording of it, because yeah, I think
Yeah.
all the messages were just really beautiful. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that you were able to share your story and just how yeah, how you work your magic in the world.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you both so much.
Yeah, you were just
Um,
you're a gift to find. You were just such a gift to find. So thank you for being in the world and sharing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.